Welcome to CharityVillage Connects. I'm Mary Barrell. Nonprofits in Canada are notoriously slow when it comes to investing in new technology. Will they be left behind when it comes to the new AI tools that are poised to revolutionize our world? In this episode of CharityVillage Connects, we take a hard look at what AI has to offer nonprofit organizations, as well as its potential drawbacks. Is there a way to responsibly harness the power of AI for social good? To discuss these important issues, please welcome Meena Das. Meena is the founder, consultant, and facilitator at her two practices, Namaste Data and Data is for Everyone. Namaste Data is focused on advancing data equity for nonprofits and social impact agencies. Meena specializes in designing and teaching equitable research tools and analyzing engagement. Meena supports nonprofits in three core areas: data collection assessments, community surveys, and staff workshops on improving data equity. Welcome to the podcast, Meena.
Thank you so much for having me here, Mary. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's start off with the basics and a bit of an introduction to AI technology. For our listeners who might not be well versed in this new technology, what should they know to start?
I always start with we are those, when I say we, as humans, are those who have been using AI for a really long time now, like I would say quite a few years. We have seen different flavors of it. We see it when we book our travels, and suddenly those pop-ups comes up saying, hey, people are also visiting this place and pairing this with this hotel. That's a little bit of an AI. When we are trying to send money through PayPal from country to country, and it shows up saying, it could be a risk, your profile could be at risk, you need to give your video and send a photo. That's a little bit of AI for risk aversion. So we have had flavors of AI in the past. In our nonprofit industry, AI comes up in different flavors. Some of it is like identifying prospects, making sure what to give as the next ask, or maybe scaling our operations or fundraising operations in general. That's where some of these AI pieces come. They come in a lot of different forms: apps, tools. We don't need a separate heavy machinery like a lot of movies show. But AI has been amongst us for a long time now. And only through recent conversations, and I know, Mary, you and I are getting into it, we are going to see how it became suddenly such a topic of the town now. And why is it now?
Well, we've certainly seen it a lot in the news and in the headlines. But what are some of the opportunities that exist for nonprofit organizations who might be thinking about embracing AI in a more fulsome way?
Well, there are different ways I can answer that question, but for the listeners here, I want to help and answer this with one lens that AI can be brought in broadly speaking in three places in our nonprofits. One, it can be brought in for our internal stakeholders, for lack of a better term, our staff, our board members, our volunteers, something to do with them, where we can support them to have more of their time for the things that matters. The other piece where AI can come is for the nonprofits themselves, like improving the program efficiency, scaling the impact. The third place where AI can come into picture is the outward, or I would say external stakeholders, such as our audience, our community, our external future allies with whom we can understand, okay, who is the next best person whose profile matches to be our ally, and we can talk and reach out to them. There are three broad, in a very naive way to say, those are three places where we can think of AI technologies to come and help. The question really is, are we there yet to use and find out those opportunities in our organization? There could be a lot of opportunities that exist in the industry, but are we ready as an organization to embrace some of those in our organization? And if we can, where can we build it, not in a way which is another subscription living in our desktop or living in our platform, but really as a sustainable, long-term, healthy solution that allows us for what we are supposed to be doing, which is building relationship with humans.
Now, do you have some specific use cases of nonprofits who's integrated AI into their either their operations or their outreach or their external communication? Like, can you give me some examples?
Of course, and I was waiting for this question. I really wanted to get into this one. Well, one of the reasons, so let me take a step back to respond to this question and start from one of the reasons AI became so popular in the last 6 months, I would say, in our world is ChatGPT. This conversation would not be complete if I don't mention ChatGPT. ChatGPT is one of those, for any listener who hasn't experienced ChatGPT before, if you Google ChatGPT, a little website comes up where you can type your questions in normal, day-to-day communication English that we use. You can place your questions and you would get some responses out of that platform. It's basically talking to a machine right in front of you. That's ChatGPT, and that's not the entire AI. That's called generative AI. Basically, it's using some language that you are feeding into it to produce some output for you. So recently, to your question, Mary, about use case, a very practical, specific use case, one of the organizations reached out to me a couple weeks ago to figure out if we are ready to use, if they are ready to use ChatGPT in their organization, and how can they use it if they can use it. So we started to talk a little bit about all the different um, layers of if they are ready or not. And I know we have a question if how to understand if we are ready or not. So I'll keep that part for that question. But what we did was we identified one place where ChatGPT could be used is for their social media coordinators. They have two coordinators. It's a small scale organization. They have two part-time social media coordinators, and they are present on two platforms, Instagram and LinkedIn. They're doing okay job. Like the social media coordinators are really doing a good job, but at the same time, ChatGPT could help them to create some content for the social media posts. Like it's helpful for creating content. But what we did was, instead of simply producing content, we created two-layer training for those social media coordinators. We first trained them how to use ChatGPT well, ethically, thinking about the audience, thinking about the community. We taught them how to pull up those posts, make it your own, add the tone of the organization. Once that is done, we started to realize, okay, now so social media coordinators have free time. They don't have to spend so much time to keep producing content. So now what? So the second layer of training kicked in where the fundraisers were paired with those social media coordinators to learn to talk and build relationship with the followers and have one-on-one meetings. So we did not just save time, we repurposed time. Instead of just taking the time to just produce content and now you're free, let's eliminate the roles. We don't need the roles. We still need the roles. And now those two people, amazing people, are used to have one-on-one conversation with new followers, have coffee chats, and they have brought in more volunteers for the organization through those conversations. So I would say um, that feels to me to be a very good example that yes, AI can be scary, but we can start in like an easy small step and try to make it practical for us by making sure how do we repurpose time. We are not removing anything, deleting anything. We are trying to make the keeping the center why of building relationships with people. How do we do that? By making use of these new technologies.
So that's a great example of using a technology that we've all heard about if we haven't tried it out for ourselves. What about sort of I guess more customized AI kind of practices or programs that organizations might be using internally for other kinds of operations that aren't quite as, I guess, obvious as the ChatGPT use, which is a fantastic tool for anybody who's interested in creating content.
The other example, that's a great question. The other example, I would say, so I have designed algorithms for a really long time. I've been working with data for a really long time in different roles and capacities. So, collecting data, designing visuals, designing algorithms. One of the things, and this is an example I'm offering, not something happening right now, but have been happening in the past for nonprofits, for AI isn't new in our world. It has existed for a long time. It has had different flavors. We have had, you may have heard terms like analytics, you may have heard terms like data science, machine learning. They are all flavors of this one entire big idea that systems can learn about our data and then become this self-learning sufficient enough to produce insights out of it. That's the basic simple idea. So the other kinds of example would be creating in-house algorithms for nonprofits to understand which donors are more engaged and how to define that engagement. Or for the same case for higher ed institutions, how do you define your alumni engagement? The traditional methods of designing those engagement scores comes with some baked in biases, comes in some baked in understanding that's our human understanding, purely human understanding. Using a little bit of algorithm and then keeping an intervention of humans in there, it allows us to use our scores not entirely by the traditional definition that, oh, so and so definition or so and so formula has been happening and baked into our Excel spreadsheet for years. This one really allows and takes all the data and sees, are there any hidden patterns that we need to be careful about, we need to know about. And mind you, when I talk about creating algorithms for engagement scores, just as an example, we don't feed into it any of these racial, ethnic, age, any of the social identifiers in there, just to make sure that the algorithms are inclusive and they are not inappropriately stereotyping or perpetuating any harm. So the algorithms are designed in a way, the ones that I'm talking about, in a way that really centers the community and changes the definition of the traditional ways we calculate the engagement of somebody and how well can they be our allies. That's a complicated question and it cannot be forced into 2 plus 2 equals to 4. So using a little bit of algorithm there with the intervention of humans has been helpful in the past. I would offer that up as a second example to your question, Mary.
That is really a kind of prescient in a way to my next question, which is really that, clearly while AI can provide enormous advantages, time-saving advantages, providing new ways of looking at things by having that external sort of analysis going on and being able to continue to learn based on the inputs that you input into the algorithm or the program. But clearly, it's not all positive. Certainly, there's been quite a bit of discussion about some of the problems with AI, at least in its current form. You've mentioned some of the biases that are in any kind of program that's created. What drawbacks should our listeners be aware of if they're starting to use AI in their work? What should they be conscious of in terms of potential pitfalls?
Well, there are several, and I want to offer this as candidly. I spent a majority of my career in the past 15 years to use my learned experiences to talk about data, to work with data in the industry. Only now, after coming this side of the pandemic, I want to use my lived experiences as well to understand data, artificial intelligence, and all the ethics behind all of it. I'm saying this with the understanding that it's not easy. It has to be a habit and discipline to talk to data in a different way. We are all so accustomed to work with data and AI for that matter in this one linear lens that if we see something coming out of a product predicted for us, designed on a nice dashboard, we tend to believe it. We tend to accept it and we tend to feel happy about it that, oh wow, oh gosh, this product is now segmenting something for me in an automated way and giving it to me. So if you are asking me what is one thing that nonprofits need to be cautious of, I would say we need to learn about our data, regardless of how pretty those dashboards are that create those automated systems and reports and segmented lists for us. I want us, our nonprofits, all of us, to remember to learn about the data that's foundation of those dashboards. And let me give you one of the examples of the kind of risk I'm talking about. So imagine that you get and when I say you, I mean like a nonprofit fundraiser. Let's say that you get a segmented list of your donors to talk to every morning. That's, your system does that. You get that kind of a pretty list. And you are taught the way you can interact with the system is making sure that the data points A, B, and C should be up to date and adequate so that the system can work in its algorithm and produce that output. So you, as someone who has never worked with these things before, you remember, okay, data points A, B, and C, all right, I'll make sure they are top quality, they are there. I'll make sure because I like the list. But here's the problem. If we don't learn about our data enough, if we don't learn to question some of these things once in a while, we may miss to collect data points D and E, which may also be important about our constituents, about our audience, about our communities. There could be more data points. Take identity, for example. There are so many other components that makes us who we are, and not everything is captured. Now, I'm not saying we need to capture everything just for the sake of algorithms. What I want to say is we need intentionality. We need a purpose, and that comes by understanding our data, by understanding what we are seeing in front of us in our dashboards. Where is it coming from? Asking questions once in a while, feeling comfortable to challenge some of these systems. As much as they might be pretty, they are still systems and here to support us in our work. So I want us to be comfortable there and be cautious of learning of the data that we have.
It's so interesting. So I guess not being too intimidated by the speed at which some of these programs can provide output, and really lean on our own sort of intrinsic intelligence in analyzing the output based on what the data might be, and questioning and being analytical ourselves about what these programs are actually producing. It's sort of the garbage in, garbage out sort of thing that we hear about so much in terms of any kind of program. I wonder, when you go into the ethical piece of AI, we certainly know that you're working on a charter for the ethical use of AI currently. Can you talk a little bit about that initiative? And obviously, anything to do with ethics is important, but why it's particularly important in the nonprofit sector and what you're learning from this process.
That's a fantastic question because it's kind of asking me to look at my last 3 months, maybe too deep, like all the night meetings and evening calls and working on charters and documents. Well, the project is really about building a foundation, some sort of a foundation, I would say, to talk about ethical AI, responsible AI. You would see, Mary, in the last, so I think ChatGPT, for example, came out early 2023, maybe 6 months or, and it got 100 million users very fast. The rate of its pickup in the market was really fast. This is something that this is the I would say the part that scares me. All of us use AI. Few of us understand and care enough to talk about it, and very few understand the other parts of it. It's just like teeny portion. But we are all users of this technology, and we want to use it more in our work. This is the reason that gap between from all of us to very few at the bottom, that gap, we need that space to talk about the ethical concerns. Because if we don't do that, the risk is we are going to perpetuate some of the harms that has been happening in the past. These systems, AI, it's not magic. It's something like someone like you and me sat someday and decided, okay, design some code and then coded it and polished it and sent it out and shipped it into the world saying, hey, here's a perfect algorithm for you and use it. It's upon us to understand how are we using it, why are we using it, what's the consequence of using it, and who gets missed when we start using it, who is getting affected and impacted by it. We need to ask those kind of questions, And this framework is that foundation to give us that some of that knowledge so that we can start asking those questions without being intimidated. I mean, to be honest, I run one of the workshops and I want to offer one example. I know it's kind of ruining a little bit the surprise element I offer in the workshop. So I do a workshop called Moving Towards Human-Centric AI. The first exercise, the moment we all get into the workshop, I say my participants, here, I know your names. I went onto the social media. I collected some publicly available information about you, and I gave you a score. So, for example, Mary, if you would be participant of my workshop, I would say, Mary, I'm giving you 850 out of 900. That's fantastic score. Now pick a gift for yourself. I would also say, Meena, that's another participant, and you got 500 out of 900. So that's not a great score, but it's okay. Pick a gift for yourself. I want to celebrate you for joining me on the workshop. Trust me, I have run this several times. Every single time, everybody picks up a gift and nobody challenges me. Where the hell did you come up with this score with? Why did you sort us? Why did you give us numbers? Where is it coming from? For some reason or the other, nobody challenges me. This is what we want to change in the industry. To be comfortable, to challenge systems, regardless of where these algorithms are coming from, to ask, give me the transparency because I don't trust it. That's the kind of knowledge we need in our sector, in our industry. And the point of that charter is to offer that kind of foundational layer. Now, we fully understand as designing the charter, it's going to be messy and it's going to be imperfect, but it's going to be a work that evolves. And that's what the charter is. As of now, it has 8 or 10, I think, standard points about how to use AI responsibly. And if anybody, the listeners who are right now here listening, I would say use something, search for fundraising.ai. That's the name of the group, the all volunteering group who are figuring out this charter and figuring out what are the risks to our sector for this work. That's what this is all about.
So I wonder, could you just name for our listeners what some of the ethical issues might be that they need to be aware of? Just in broad pictures. I don't expect you to have an answer exactly to solve these ethical problems, but what are they? What are the ethical issues that they need to know about?
Well, for starters, the lack of transparency, right? The data collection. Let's start there with the data collection. It's not clear, for example, who collects the data for the AI systems, how are they collected? Um, and because, like I said before, the AI systems are self-learning, continuously self-learning systems. You feed the data and they're learning it and they're churning out insights. So one of the issues with concerns with responsible AI or not having using responsible AI is not making sure how the data got collected, got fed into the system, and now it's now constantly being learned and used to produce output. For example, we shouldn't be entering race and ethnicity into these algorithms. These social identity parameters should be for humans to understand, to get more context, and then to layer it on the top of algorithms instead of baking it into algorithms and then the algorithm saying, oh yeah, don't give this person so much points because yeah, they are coming from this race or ethnicity, so they are likely going to be harmful, or give them more because they're likely going to be better. Those kind of things, they should never happen system wise or human wise, but we don't enter any social identity data points into algorithms. That's a very concrete example, I would say, and one example, to be honest. But that's one of those things. And without having these guardrails, for lack of another term, we actually risk trust of our community. We risk the trust of our donors. We risk the trust of our external friends and supporters to say, okay, how we are engaging with our technology that reflects on how we treat the data, which is about the people again. So it comes back to the same thing, trust and care of what to show. So this is one example I would offer of what we want to do. Where is the data coming from? Is it generating trust and transparency or not for the algorithms that we are using?
And when we look at the desire to integrate AI and take the benefits of AI technology, what kind of barriers exist for organizations in the nonprofit sector, you know, particularly smaller ones? That might be the first concern, but generally for nonprofit organizations, how might the sector overcome these barriers? So, what are they, and how do we solve the problem of overcoming them?
Well, I would say, and again, with every response, I always add that these are the responses at this moment. They are going to evolve with time, just as AI is evolving, so would these responses evolve. At this point in time, I would say the risks or the barriers, let's talk about the barriers that an organization may have in implementing some of these issues would be, well, first starting figuring out where to integrate AI. So we heard about AI. Now what? Where should I bring it first? Where can I get it first? And then finding out the source of AI. Like, is it about an app? Is it about a tool? Should I get a CRM product? Because nowadays CRM offers add-ons on different things. And it could quickly become a matter of FOMO a little bit. Like, I'm missing out on something if I don't get in on this right now. For anybody listening and feeling that kind of FOMO, I want you to feel comfortable in taking the pause to really understand why you need AI for the starters. I want you to listen to your community so deeply and so well to understand where are the pain points for which I really need automations and for which I really need AI. AI shouldn't exist just for the sake of AI. It needs to have a purpose. It needs to have a why it exists with us. And same goes for our nonprofits. Our why is building relationships in our community to build a change. And for that to happen, I want our listeners to listen to the community's pain points to why that AI needs to be brought into the picture. Unless that happens, we are going to get into that FOMO cycle too often and to feel, okay, I need AI right now. So I think that's the biggest barrier right there, not understanding where AI can come in, why it needs to be here in our realm, and how it can integrate well. The second barrier then comes is we don't understand our data that well. I want all of us to get comfortable with our data. What exists in our CRM? Where did it come from? How long do we have this data? What's the data hygiene? Is there potential we can do something with that existing data? Because the truth is, AI systems would need data. If an organization is just starting out, sure, you can use ChatGPT, which is generative AI, a kind of a different AI, but to use something like creating very nuanced scores for your community members, that's going to take time until you understand your data and have built upon your data a little bit. So I think the second barrier is understanding of that data and having that data. And the third barrier that I would say is, see, AI is offered in a lot of different flavors these days. Some organizations would offer it like, here, take a quick add-on, pay for this, and it will be like a little Chrome tab on the top. Some would say, here, there's this like a very sophisticated tool. We would install it on your system, and then it exists as a standalone thing. It can be polished and offered in different ways, but the reality is the third barrier most organizations have is, are you ready to make it as a sustainable solution? If this is going to be one of those solutions which you pay for another add-on and two licenses and it just stays, and nobody does with it anything, it's not helpful to bring, that's not bringing AI into organization. That's really just, not making the best use and we are not doing service to our resources that we have. And the best that we can do in that case is understanding, is our organization ready? And I think where you and I are going to talk about the pyramid, but I want to bring it a little bit here, is this understanding that if our organization has that space of inclusion where people can share their thoughts and bring and make the AI solution as their own, where the organizational culture has that space for learning and unlearning, that a new AI solution comes and everybody can understand and get a hands on that system and learn and unlearn a little bit. And then ultimately that solution becomes sustainable for the long term and not just another app. So I would say the three barriers are really understanding your data, understanding if it can be a sustainable solution or just another app, and then overall just get knowing where is the value of bringing AI in my organization and why. Those are the barriers right now I see.
And so you've written about the three tiers of AI opportunity for organizations who want to integrate AI into their work. Is that sort of related to the barriers? Can you describe, or is this sort of a different sort of piece of how you analyze it, the three tiers of AI opportunity? Can you describe that framework for us, please?
Sure. Sure, of course. I'm looking at the for anybody who's listening, I'll say I'm looking at my diagram in front of me, how it is, the pyramid. Um, and it is related to the barriers that I was just talking about. So I would say, let me give what the pyramid is. So the pyramid has three layers on it. And the purpose of that pyramid is to understand for an organization if I am ready, if we are ready for AI or not. The first layer, the very bottom layer, is I call it the basics. It has well being, it has surroundings, safety, inclusion, all those things culturally in the organization. The layer on top of it, I call it the mindset layer. That's learning, unlearning, culturally being resilient to new things, new technologies. And on the very top little layer is called the details. I call it details, which is basically apps, tools that have the AI component in it. The way I have listed it like basics, mindset, and details is because, see, unless we have that real inclusion in the organization, even if we bring AI, but if we don't talk about it on our tables, if we don't include different voices to say, hey, this is my concern for this tool of AI, if we don't have that kind of space of safety and inclusion, that AI tool, I can guarantee you, is not going to be sustainable. The same goes for the mindset layer. So let's say we are building inclusive spaces, our staff members and volunteers feel included. Now the question is, do we have that capacity to unlearn and learn things? Do we have that flexibility to unlearn and bring new things and push ourselves through this, learning curves, which could be harder and different from people to people? Do we have that kind of resilience in learning and learning culture? That's mindset. If we have that, that's great. In that case, those little tools and apps would not just stay as like another AI thing, flashy thing in the system, but they would certainly become a useful solution for the long term. Something useful in which case the people who are engaging with those systems, they come up with ideas. They are not always directed by the systems that, hey, Meena, I'm your AI system. You need to do these five things. Instead, it becomes a very symbiotic partner-like relationship where I ask the system to do something, the system supports me in supporting my why. And after we have covered the basics and the mindset, so we are resilient, we are inclusive culture, now we are ready truly to bring a solution, and all of us in the team can work together to make the solution as part of our daily habit or discipline to learn from it, to embrace it, to question it as it is needed, and to really use it. That's the details piece. That's really the tools and apps. And it's not hard to figure out the tools and apps. The hardest pieces are making sure our cultures are ready to embrace those pieces. That's what the pyramid is about.
I was speaking to another person for this podcast episode about how he integrated it into his operations. Dan Kershaw at the Furniture Bank, and he noted one of the main things that was critical was having everyone on the team have that mindset and be prepared to make those, as you say, that learning kind of practice and be excited about it as well, and be open. So I think That's such an important point that you make. To wrap things up, I would love to hear from you what words of advice you'd like to leave our listeners with as they contemplate the potential use of AI in their nonprofits.
Last words, huh? Okay. Um, I would say don't be scared to try something like this. See, AI is a tool, it's a technology, and it's here and it's going to be here inevitably more and more going forward around us in our work. And don't be scared of that technology. It's here to support us, built by us, people like us, for us. So it's here for a reason. So don't be scared to try different flavors of AI whenever you get a chance, whether it's trying a little bit of ChatGPT or whether it's trying out a new tool or a new app, however, whichever form it is. The one first point would be to not be scared and try it. And the second point would be to make space then to talk what you did with people around you. See, we need two layers of learning always with AI. One is the individual level, where we are getting comfortable in engaging with these systems. The second layer is where we are making people around us to be comfortable in engaging with these systems. We need a symbiotic relationship with that technology, but not just very siloed one person relationship. We want something where me and my team members are comfortable to do that kind of conversation about this technology. So if I have to leave with one thought, that would be don't be scared and keep trying and definitely talk about it and make space within your teams to talk about these things.
Well, Meena, it's been such a pleasure speaking with you, and I'm sure nonprofits across the country will really benefit from your insights into AI and all of your expertise. Thank you for joining us on Charity Village Connects.
Thank you so much for having me here, Mary. It was a pleasure.